So kindly start the debate with this. Ethics, the scope of discipline. So as we have very briefly understood the syllabus, now there's a part called administrative ethics that we'll talk later. Right? Whatever we have discussed till now is mostly the part of theoretical ethics. Right? Ethics as an academic discipline. Now the scope of discipline is evolving continuously. Right? For example, today, right, there is a contemporary global perspective on ethics and leadership in administration. So why we are so concerned about ethics and leadership in administration? 2-3 scholars have. Terry Cooper, a scholar, have, right? Or one is that female Rai from Warwick University. They are all studying today the idea of ethical leadership in administration or governance. So why they are concerned with this area? This is a very developed area today. Most of the law, governance, public policy studies are concerned with that only, right? Especially when you talk about the changing profile of the society. So why they are studying these areas? What is the utility of this? So ethics जो है एक वो fixed knowledge नहीं है, right? Because knowledge of ethics is synonymous to or somewhere interrelated with the human value system. As the human values evolve with time, right, and they come in sync with the social and the practical changes around us, right, there is need for creating an equilibrium between the individual value system and the collective value system. That is why ethics as an area of study keeps evolving over a period of time. Now this evolution has come in two aspects. One, the technology or the technique of studying ethics or ethical evaluation. Second is the principle of ethical evaluation, right? For example, if I use technology, I may make people more ethical, not because they want to, right? Because they are forced to. So when we use techniques and technology, right, we somewhere achieve the ethical behavior, right? But this is not done through voluntary means. It is done through involuntary means, right? One aspect is principle, theoretical study, where we try to know more about the human behavior and we try to transform human behavior. So there are two ways of ethical consequences. One, the internal mechanisms, right? Other is the external mechanism. Governance is concerned with both. So when you say digital era governance is making it ethical, external, right? When you say ethical training is making people ethical, internal, right? So ये जो भी terms हैं, whatever terms we talked about, right, which somewhere relates to the evaluation of human action or intent or consequence, right? It is all part of ethics. So subset of ethics can be religion, it can be law, right? It can be moral value system, it can be culture, belief, anything, whatever. This all constitutes the part of ethics. So you don't have to always distinguish between them, first of all, right? Because they're all the components of something called ethics, right? So ethics as an area of study will have two components, right? If I say the discipline of ethics, one will be the theory, one will be the application. Right. In this also we can further classify normative and empirical. Normative and empirical, and application is individual and institutional. Then again, this is one perspective, let's put it P1. Then we have another perspective, let's put P2. Then it is understood in terms of universal and contextual. This is a second perspective. Fine. These diagrams will help you understand broad ideas, so you can use them. Second perspective is it can be universally taken as a universal context, universal application or contextual application, right? Third perspective. Intrinsic, extrinsic. Now, there are intrinsic aspects of ethical behavior or evaluation, and there are extrinsic aspects, and there is an area which is a convergence of these two. For example, we say moral behavior influenced by one's own value system, right? And then extrinsic factor, law, making people act morally, right? So that portion where the law and the personal value system collaborate, that is called the convergence or overlap. So you might be internally willing to do something, and you might be externally influenced to do something, right? Understanding? See, ये तीसरा perspective है ethics का. Fourth perspective. Fine. Then, or let's make it in a different manner. Ethics as means and ethics as ends. This is also an important perspective where we view ethics as means and ethics as end, right? Try to understand. क्या है ये difference? Being good, right? Doing being good. Fine. Ethical होना अपने आप में end है, right? Ethical होना एक means. You understand? Both ways. Well, public servant should be ethical. क्या है वो? Means है. Toward some ethical end. राम राज्य क्या है? एक end है. Or whatever you can say, right? This is also an important perspective. इसमें whatever we are doing, these diagrams have covered a lot of your theoretical content, right? इसको 15-20 पेज में किताब लिखती है. 15-20 पेजेस पढ़ोगे तब जाके ये कंक्लूजन्स बुक्स देंगी. वही लॉजिकल है, राइट? व्हाई टू वेस्ट दैट टाइम? सो लॉजिकली ये भी एक पर्सपेक्टिव है कि भाई एथिक्स ये भी है और वो भी है, राइट? देन अनदर पर्सपेक्टिव है कि भाई मोरालिटी, राइट, और एथिक्स. दिस इज ऑल्सो पर्सपेक्टिव कि मोरालिटी और एथिक्स डिस्टिंक्ट है, बट देयर इज सम कॉमन ग्राउंड. One perspective is this also, that morality is distinct from ethics. बिल्कुल, पर ये perspective है. Try to understand first. It says कि morality is distinct from ethics. This is also a viewpoint, right? And there is an area of convergence of both, right? ये एक viewpoint है, absolute fact नहीं है, right? General. So ये perspective, what is the utility of this perspective? That somewhere we are able to understand, we are able to distinguish, right? Distinguish between what? Correct. Distinguish between personal and universal. This helps us to make a distinction between the personal and the universal. If I say all morality is ethics, correct, कोई गलत नहीं है, right? But the logic is not all ethics can be moral. That's true. So every moral action may have its own basis. And many times we may not find any ethical explanation of these moral actions. Understand? When you say moral, we also treat in a part of the study or part of the content coming purely from your personal traditions or faith or culture, right? That may not fit into the global or universal framework of ethics. So there are a lot of traditional values and cultures which are considered to be correct or right by those people. राजस्थान में जैसे कुछ communities हैं, फाइन, उदयपुर के आगे, और वैसे भी जोधपुर के पास भी बहुत सारी ऐसी कम्युनिटीज हैं, राइट, जो प्रोस्टिट्यूशन को एक मॉरल एक्ट मानती है, बहुत सारे रीजन्स में, राइट. सो देयर इज अ कम्युनिटी, आई थिंक बेरिया कम्युनिटी. सो दे बिलीव कि भाई जो फर्स्ट डॉटर है वो प्रोस्टिट्यूशन एज अ प्रोफेशन एक्सेप्ट करेगी, राइट, और उसके पेरेंट्स ही उसको उस प्रोफेशन में डालते हैं. इनफैक्ट दे सेलिब्रेट द बर्थ ऑफ डॉटर, not because of any reason but because of the economic reasons. So of this, as per their context, it is a moral act कि भाई हमने गलत क्या किया, कुछ गलत नहीं किया. What wrong we have done? Nothing. See, but as per the rational standards that you will say, you might say that this is completely illogical. So it is possible that many times the moral aspects which we feel are right, they may not fit into the universal contextual framework, right? This is also one perspective. Otherwise, the general perspective है वो यही है कि भाई see, ethics is a larger area of study. It's a pursuit of rational knowledge, logical knowledge, and morality जो है वो इसका एक part. Now, from this perspective, it is somewhere assumed that every moral action or every moral principle or value system is subject to ethical evaluation. Fine? Right. Fine. So, now see. So, there are numerous perspectives which can help us understand the scope of ethics. Kya? So, from individual to institutional, a continuum है. From personal to collective to universal, a continuum है. See? So, there are different levels of evaluation. That we have talked about levels of evaluation. लीगल हो सकता है, बट लीगल हमेशा नहीं होगा. बहुत चीजें लॉ में नहीं है, फाइन, लेकिन लॉजिकली एक्सेप्टेबल है कि सही है, एंड दे आर आल्सो पार्ट ऑफ द मॉरल ट्रेडिशंस एंड कल्चर. द मोमेंट वी से तो सैक्रिफाइस, एनिमल सैक्रिफाइस इज नॉट राइट, तो वो लॉजिकल यूनिवर्सल स्टैंडर्ड से भी लॉजिकल है ना, और मॉरल वैल्यू सिस्टम से भी सही है, तो वो ओवरलैप कर जाता है. बट कहीं पे एनिमल सैक्रिफाइस जस्टिफाइड है मॉरल वैल्यू सिस्टम पे, राइट, लेकिन यूनिवर्सल ह्यूमन राइट्स या एनिमल राइट्स के बेसिस पे दैट इज रॉन्ग. बट देयर मे नॉट बी अ लॉ अबाउट इट, राइट. But there are alternative means also, no? Yes, sir. Inevitable हो तब तो. But sir, right to life has been right. Right, then you have to use multi-perspective. Why you are using only single perspective? The right to life means that livelihood should be acquired only through one means. How is that? Then it will also come into picture, no? Whether there is a consent of that person or not. Right to life में ये भी तो आएगा ना भाई, कि मेरी choice भी तो होनी चाहिए. Fine. So see, levels क्या है इसके? अब ये भी एक classification है या perspective है कि भाई ethics माइक्रो लेवल इवैल्यूएशन है, राइट, मिडिल लेवल इवैल्यूएशन है, दैट मींस आर वी सर्चिंग फॉर एन एवरेज पाथ, राइट, या एक मैक्रो लेवल इवैल्यूएशन. विल ऑलवेज बी द फोकस ऑफ एथिक्स कलेक्टिव, यूनिवर्सल, और इट विल बी individual or personal, right, basis of evaluation, or it may somewhere fall in between. Why? Because individual is also part of the collective. Fine. Now see, so somewhere we establish a continuum. Continuum from what? Individual to community to society, or social to state. Individual, community, society, right, and global. अब जैसे जैसे the moment we start ethical scrutiny, right, the parameters will increase. As we go here, the parameters will decrease. तो broadest parameters कहाँ पे होंगे? So if we draw a pyramid, right, of levels of evaluation, so what is happening? See, let's say individual, community, right, society, global. Now see, in terms of hierarchy, this is the highest level, right? But in terms of scrutiny, right, this is minimum, this is maximum. See, so when I say quality of evaluation, quality of scrutiny, this increases, right? If I say, you're able to first understand this. जैसे ही हम ग्लोबल इवैल्यूएशन करते हैं, तो पैरामीटर्स ऑफ इवैल्यूएशन कैसे होंगे? कम होंगे, लेकिन क्वालिटेटिव बहुत होंगे. देयर विल बी मोर स्क्रूटनी. पैरामीटर्स का सेंस क्या है? जो ग्लोबल पैरामीटर्स होंगे, राइट, वो कैसे होंगे? जो यूनिवर्सल पैरामीटर्स के लिए काम करेंगे. नहीं, यूनिवर्सल पैरामीटर्स कम होते हैं, ज्यादा होते हैं. इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे डिस्टिंक्शन ज्यादा हो सकता है ना. यू डोंट ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड इन टर्म्स ऑफ नंबर, राइट. नंबर यहां ज्यादा हो सकते हैं, कम हो सकते हैं. आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट नंबर. I am talking about when you evaluate anything universally, right? Because there are common parameters needed, right? So obviously those parameters will be more or less defined. नहीं? अब हमने ह्यूमन राइट्स के बेसिस पे किया तो वो एक डिफाइंड पैरामीटर्स है ना. When we are doing a universal evaluation, the context doesn't come into picture. When we are going down, right, the contextual factors will increase. You can say that way. Don't think in terms of number, right? So contextual factors यहां इंक्रीज करते हैं, कॉन्टेक्चुअल फैक्टर्स यहां डिक्रीज कर जाएंगे. So I would say that at individual level we do not, or ethics does not much focus on individual level evaluation, right? The scientific knowledge, the established knowledge is more concerned about the universal level evaluation, right? And from there we derive something which can be used to understand this. For example, all humans must act in this way, and so has this individual acted in this way or not? Abhi evaluation hoga, right? Individual is acting in this manner does not lead to every human should act in that manner. You understand, right? So we say that, okay, fine, the understanding or evaluation or scope of evaluation of ethics can be, right, it can be inductive versus deductive. I'll give you the example, don't worry. Right? Particular to general, general to particular, right? For example, क्या example is present? Inductive study. For example, suicide. Now, we would not have witnessed suicide as mass phenomena. Right? Society is not the normal social act. Suicide is not a normal social act, right? So it is not visible. Generally at the collective level, it is visible only at the individual level, right? But from this analysis at individual level, we arrive at certain things which can be generalized. तो इस इंडिविजुअल एक्ट से कुछ हमें क्या मिलता है इसकी स्टडी से? Not universal, but you can say some general characteristics. General characteristics, right? And these general characteristics more or less would be visible, right? Or more or less would be applicable universally, or will help us understand the universal behavior. Fine. See? So there are some general aspects of behavior which can be also witnessed at the individual level also. See? Societies, communities want to live peacefully. Societies, communities want to have social, emotional relations. Society exists only when people or the collectively people want to reside in a particular manner. Now, when you draw inferences from this, you also find that yes, every individual somewhere is also like that. Or any phenomena, there are a lot of phenomena which we can observe at the general level. So when we say people in general are good, how we have derived this? We have derived it from the collective behavior. That people, when they're residing together, they don't act like a mob, they don't want to be anarchic, they don't want to be violent, they want to remain peaceful, right? तो हमने इससे क्या derive किया कि individuals भी कहीं ना कहीं ऐसा सोचते हैं. Understand? People are motivated by money, तो individuals भी motivated है. Individual is motivated by money, collective भी हो सकता है. So we may have several ways of understanding this. See? ये जो हमने use किया ये सब क्या tools है. These are all methodological tools of analysis, and they are collectively the tools of any subject, right? So see, first, these are the perspectives regarding what ethics is. Now comes the another question. You see, ethics versus, now come to the versus part. Morality versus law. Fine. Now, if we try to understand the epistemology, right? So we use the word ki bhai ethikos or ethikos. Ethikos, ethos. Now these are somewhere the root terms, right? The root ideas which lead to this particular term, right? So when we look at these root terms, what do they reflect? Good, correct? They reflect being something right. They reflect being something good. The conduct which is right, the conduct which is good, or the behavior which is desirable. Seeking to being good, right? So the idea that ethics is what? It is something which is related to the understanding or definition or evaluation of, right, the purpose or the objective of being good or right or desirable. Or you can also further analyze it, right? It may also mean to the desire coming out of seeking virtues or to become virtuous. This is a perpetual desire. This is a perpetual need of humans to better themselves, to improve themselves. So there is need for a theoretical study which helps us understand that how people can better themselves, how people can improve themselves, how better people can seek something good. Right. Now, see. So ultimately, right, this comes to a conclusion that ethics as a subject is what? A knowledge that is trying to, what it is trying to? It is trying to understand what constitutes good, right, correct. So first thing that ethics want to do is to understand what is this, right? And ultimately, what is the idea? That there will be a description, a descriptive analysis. Based on logic, facts, rationality, deductions. So there will be a logical study based on logic, facts, rationality. You can use the word systematic if you want. Deductions, cause-effect relations, right? So that ultimately you arrive at what? So that you arrive at, now you can use the word systematic. Systematic, substantial scientific knowledge about desirable human behavior. Now, first there will be a description that what is the desirable human behavior and why this is a desirable human behavior, right? Then the next part will be obviously to now see, ethics is not only concerned about discussing and describing the human behavior, it is also concerned about prescribing what constitutes good. And this prescription is again based on the same logic and rationality. It is not devoid of logic. So is the science or is the study of ethics discretionary? No. At least it does not want to be discretionary. Right? Is it without any empirical evidences? No. Right. Now see. So that is general, the study of ethics. Right? Now, what constitutes good? This is a very typical complex question. Because there is no general, there is no universal definition of what constitutes good. So see, this good, or this definition of good, or these factors which constitute good, these elements of behavior which are good, they come from diverse sources. What are these diverse sources? That is morality. So morality क्या करती है? It provides the basic ingredient, the basic premises on which ethical knowledge is developed. So we keep filtering when we have diverse sources of what? Kyun? Now we are coming to that part. See? So when we use the word morality now, which constitutes something called mores or emerging out of tradition, tradition or habit, that becomes moral, right? So morality is mores emerging out of tradition or habit, right? Which somewhere is related to our cultural values, conventions. Fine? Cultural values, conventions, things which are done, right? As a matter of faith. Things which emerge out of the established. You understand? Okay. These are something which are established. Will curiosity allow you to accept things as it is? Curiosity is the womb of experimentation, right? Curiosity is the creator of scientific temper. Mores do not flourish, neither they grow nor they evolve through curiosity. They go through acceptance. Fixed, or it flows like a particular speed only, right? Some it's moving at a constant speed. Technically, there is no acceleration. So to act, okay, fine. See, so somewhere morality comes out of habit, one's preconceived notions, or it is more about a pattern, established pattern, right? You can write that word. It is established pattern, and it comes out of generally faith and acceptance of things which are existing. So the morality is always a product of a context. Ethics is not. Ethics is constantly striving to develop a scientific knowledge. Obviously, ethics somewhere, right? Somewhere is what you can say the upgraded version of morality. उसी का filtered, sophisticated, evolved form है ethics. That means it is obvious that ethics subsumes morality, right? Being good is the ultimate question, right? Now, in which context it is being asked? Being good. So wherever it is asked, what is good, what is good, what is good, what is good, right? It all somewhere falls under being or the idea of what is good. So ethics का ultimate question है what is universally good, what is logically good, right? And morality का ultimate question है what is good in my context. तो ये good और वो जो बड़ा वाला good है सब एक साथ है कि नहीं? सब good है कि नहीं? तो ये तो लॉजिकल है कि सर्च तो मोरालिटी में भी गुड का है और एथिक्स में भी गुड का है. द ओनली डिफरेंस इज कि मोरालिटी इज नॉट सर्चिंग फॉर द गुड बेस्ड ऑन साइंटिफिक लॉजिकल रैशनल टेम्पर. एथिक्स इज डूइंग इट. यू अंडरस्टैंड? So I would say, okay, in my tradition, these are the moral aspect, right? अब ethical scholar आएगा बोलेगा ठीक है, these are the moral aspect, right? But these three do not seem to be in sync with the universal ethical principle. So ये तुम्हारे दो aspects जो हैं वो moral तो हो सकते हैं तुम्हारे लिए, लेकिन वो ethical नहीं है. Understand? So morality generally arises out of one's own internal or personal sense of right or wrong. Now you write it, Vicky. Right. Now below this, right? Okay. Ethics, देखिए. Ethics is primarily concerned with the universal sense of right or wrong. Wrong based on logic, rationality, and empirical studies. Logic, rationality, and empirical studies. Whereas morality emerges from a personalized sense of right or wrong. Personalized sense of right or wrong. Wrong based on habits, customs, conventions, or biased value systems. For example, okay, religious principles or religious doctrines, you can write. Religious doctrines that establish distinct habits or do's and don'ts do not take into consideration the criteria of universal good. These doctrines present a very, very customized or personal world view. See, so they may have some universal aspects, right? But they are not born out of this concern. Nahin? You might say, I want to work for the society, right? But your urge for being civil servant is not born out of that consideration. Your urge for being a civil servant is purely born out of the culture of poverty that we have. Culture of intellectual poverty, right? So, intellectual poverty to hai. नहीं है क्यों? Where are we working towards being intellectual? Are we working towards being civilized? If a job makes you uncivilized, what kind of job is that? If a job makes you corrupt, if the primary criteria of that job or being successful in the job is to be corrupt, is to be politicized, is to be insensitive to the people, तो ये किस टाइप का जॉब है? और किस टाइप का ईगो है कि मैं इतनी पढ़ाई करके ये जॉब कर सी? Right? Understand? Use of knowledge purely as an instrumental means to achieve some objective, right, deprives you of the quality of that knowledge. The knowledge that would have transformed your thinking, right, is being merely used as a factual tool to qualify the exam. तो ये जो प्रोसेस कर रहे हो, इससे तुम एक बेटर ह्यूमन बीइंग भी तो बन सकते हो, एक सिविलाइज्ड पर्सन भी बन सकते हो और ब्यूरोक्रेट भी बन सकते हो, नहीं? लेकिन 90 मिनट कैप्सूल, 120 मिनट क्या है वो बूम्बास्टिक क्लासेस, कौन सी क्लासेस जो भी है, मतलब जस्ट अ सिंबॉलिक नेम है ना. तो 1 आवर में अपनी पर्सनालिटी को ट्रांसफॉर्म करो 1 घंटे में. जो 25-26 साल में नहीं हो पाया वो 1 घंटे में हो जाएगा, राइट? क्यों? बिकॉज एवरीथिंग इज थॉट ऑफ एज अ टेम्पलेट. हर चीज एक फॉर्मेट है, राइट? फॉर्मेट में आ गए तो हो गया. इट्स लाइक द सेम थिंग ना कि टाइट शर्ट पहन ली तो तुम्हारा आज वेट कम लगेगा, है ना? देखिए कि आज जो है तैयार होके जाओ तो लगेगा हाँ ये आदमी अच्छे से रहता है, सिर्फ उसी दिन तैयार होके जाओ. That's an intrinsic behavior. Some people prefer to be that way, some people don't prefer to be that way. That may be a personal choice, right? But then why do you want to exhibit something, right, which you're not? Because you feel that by being something, right, is purely a formula. So you follow the formula, you can be that. तो जो knowledge transformative हो सकती थी, वो knowledge कैसी है? Transactional. This knowledge could have been highly transformative, but it ends up being transactional. प्यार दो, प्यार लो, खत्म. नहीं, पैसा दो, पैसा लो, और पैसा दो, प्यार मत लो, है ना? नहीं, तुम सोच रहे हो कि प्यार दोगे या पैसा है, ये सोच रहे हो, या क्या मांगोगे, क्या मांगोगे, है? तो चॉइस करना पड़ेगा, है ना? तो जहां पैसा ज्यादा है वहां प्यार नहीं है, राइट? और प्यार कुछ होता ही नहीं. जहां पैसा नहीं है वहां प्यार कभी आ नहीं सकता. सी, नहीं? व्हाट इज योर व्यू? It's correct. It's correct. If you don't have money, your parents will also not love you, right? Why? Because they will not find any opportunity, any means to love you. तो बार-बार तुम्हें बताएंगे, right? काश पैसे होते तो हम तुम्हारे लिए ये ले लेते, काश हम ये कर सकते, काश हम वो कर सकते, हो गया खत्म. Kash is kash, and the life goes on. See, so that's logical. You cannot evaluate things, everything around you from ethical perspective. That's true, right? But still, everything has what? Some intrinsic quality, right? And everything has some instrumental quality. Everything. हर चीज इंस्ट्रूमेंट हो सकती है और हर चीज intrinsically, right, satisfying हो सकती है. Intrinsically, what you can say, it can create a sense of achievement, a sense of happiness. Not necessarily it has to be associated with some consequence. When you meditate, you're not doing it for a consequence. Are you getting? Meditation is not sitting in that position. That position is used as a means, fine, to create the necessary condition. That's the only way. Those who have acquired the meditative state, they are walking, sitting, talking, and still they are meditating. But that's very hard. So nobody can, right? Technically, humanly, it's very difficult to achieve that. तो हर चीज के, right? Spiritualism end भी हो सकता है, means भी हो सकता है. See? But religion जो है, normally, right? Religion was supposed to be a means, right? It became an end. Everything. So when we say, do things have some intrinsic, right, personalized value? क्या किसी चीज की खुद की कोई वैल्यू है, which is free from the biases, which is free from the evaluation, right? When we evaluate things that way, that's called the rational basis of ethical evaluation. तो जो भी चीज हमें लगता है inherently good है, इसका inherent intrinsic nature good है, right? ये सिर्फ good है. मैं इसको good मानूं या ना मानूं, कोई और good माने या ना माने, right? Let's say a tree. What about nature? It has some inherent goodness, irrespective of what it does for us. It doesn't matter, right? Wherever it will be, it has some inherent goodness, and ultimately that will result in some good consequences. In spite of not looking for the consequences, if we look at it in general, just like that, has it got some inherent goodness? Yes, it does. Right? A flower. When you look at a flower, it doesn't mean, right, that you can consume it, you can use it, right, or it gives fragrance to you, then only. See, but inherently, it gives a sense of good. So see, there are things around us, there are actions around us which are inherently good, and they are free from any evaluation. Whatever evaluation you do, their inherent goodness cannot be eliminated. Because we associate this with nature. That is what we associate with, the nurturing and the nature. That is why there is inherent goodness. But no, but it is not absolute goodness, right? When mother's love become, right, a sense of ego, a sense of control, ownership, that's not good then. Till the time it is supposed to be unconditional love, but it is unconditional love for whom? For her child. If we generalize the idea of mother's love, right, for every child, तब तो गुड है. बट जैसे आप उसको कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइज करते हैं, दिस मदर्स लव फॉर दिस चाइल्ड, इट डजंट रिमेन इनहेरेंट गुड. यू अंडरस्टैंड? It is aesthetics, yes, is an important part, no doubt, because human feelings, human emotions are one of the product or consequences of aesthetics around them. more of sensory response to your environment. Okay, but leave it. So every evaluation that you do, right? One, the first thing that comes to this or becomes the basis of evaluation is your own world view. Ab your world view, community or individual or society or your world view is shaped by what? Your morality. See, your morality. What is your idea of right or wrong? Right? Or what is your community's ideas of right or wrong? Or what is your basis of evaluation? So when I say this person eats non-veg, this person goes to disco, this person wears jeans to the class, this teacher doesn't shave, right? This student doesn't cut his hair, right? ये सब क्या है? You are a student, you don't have pen. I'm a teacher, I don't have pocket also. What to do? Now see, there are certain types of attributes which are purely personal. If I keep a pen, I lose it. So I found another method. Remember everything. छोड़ो लिखना क्या है, सब याद करो. नहीं, वो भी तरीका अच्छा. Just joking. See, but logically, I cannot carry. Right? Never bought an umbrella in my life. Never. Even if I get drenched in the rain, I don't care. But I will not use umbrella. That's a problem. अब ये क्या ethical evaluation है? नहीं? See, try to understand. There is a difference. These are the basis, or these are the focus of evaluation of some basic individual attributes. That can be called as habit. So we have, like, yes, there is an evaluation. There is a hierarchy of habit also, right? The habits which are purely personal and affects individual. The habits which are purely personal and does not affect only the individual but the others around him. And the habits which affect larger society. Habits का भी gradation है, उसका भी एक ethical evaluation है, right? So habits हो सकते हैं, attributes हो सकते हैं, sense of, like you said, aesthetics हो सकते हैं. So let's say somebody doesn't like carrying umbrella here and there, then going here and there. Now that can be OCD, for example, right? OCDs you must have known about, right? So yes, people have OCDs. So it is logical that these things do not constitute a substantial basis of ethical evaluation. They can be more dubbed as what? The elementary habits of people. Understand? So see, there are people, if they have holiday, right, they'll sleep throughout the day. Right? Throughout the day, they'll keep sleeping. They won't get up. अब इसको क्या बोल सकते हैं? अब इसका moral evaluation नहीं है भाई, ये उसका personal choice है, comfort है, right? Fine, and that's logical. See? There are people, whatever be the consequence, 8 o'clock they'll take a bath, they'll get ready, and they'll start moving in the house. Others will get disturbed. 8 बजे क्या कर रहे हैं यार? मुझे तो नहीं जाना कहीं. Fine, and then they will start asking everyone, why don't you get up in time? In this, fine. There are people, old people are like that. See, for them, sleeping after 7 or 8 or 6 is a big crime. But they have to be told that there is another hemisphere, right, where people are sleeping right now. What to do? So I'm a global citizen. I don't consider myself to be part of only this particular nation या this particular hemisphere. मैं अलग hemisphere से भी अपने को associate करता हूँ. Very much. See, that's fine. That is what hedonism supports. If you are able to, if you have some personalized habits, and more or less they are giving you pleasure or comfort, right? And they do not create any nuisance value for others, right? So if you are spoiling your health, it is creating a nuisance value for your family. Try to understand. That you cannot just say that it is my health. It is not, because you are a social being. You are part of a community, right? इसीलिए levels of evaluation है, individual, community, society, global. So you start burning stubble on your field. You cannot say this is my field, this is my stubble, right? Because you cannot contain that smoke in your field. That is the problem. So when the moment these moral evaluations, these moral worldviews, right, they do not get strictly confined to your context, then they enter into the domain of ethics or ethical evaluation. Within your context, it might be considered moral. क्यों नहीं होता है? बिल्कुल पर्सनलाइज्ड हो सकता है, लेकिन एथिक्स वर्ड उसके लिए ठीक नहीं. हाँ, बट मोरालिटी इज करेक्ट. यस, एथिक्स वर्ड में नॉट बी टोटली करेक्ट फॉर दैट. Otherwise, you can use it interchangeably, it doesn't matter, right? But anybody who has academic knowledge will understand that there's a difference. So we say, कि morality kya hai? It is more internal, right? The word internal does not constitute only individual. It says internal means what? It is born out of some established value system. Yes. Things which are more intrinsically linked to your existence. So these are more intrinsic to one's feeling or culture or values. And even you can say perceptions. So morality, right, tends to be more idealistic because it is related to a context, right? What does morality do in a context? Morality is, or it creates a benchmark. Well, ethics is the universal benchmark. Morality is the benchmark of desirable behavior in that context. Morality भी तो benchmark ही है ना भाई. It is confined to a particular domain or a particular context. You understand? So if you're a public servant, right, there will be civil services morality also. You can use the word. Nothing wrong with that. Because it is too restricted to the domain of civil services. So when you say medical profession morality or morality of medical professions, confined to them, इसको आप बोल सकते हैं. लेकिन आप उसको medical ethics भी बोल सकते हैं. क्यों? Because when you take the profession, it now applies to the larger society. So don't be confused. Ethics and morality verses, and they are not verses, right? But using the word morality means it is more specific. Using the word ethics, it means it is more general. So ethics includes morality. There's nothing wrong with that. Morality or ethics is not a subset of morality. Morality is a subset of ethics because eventually it also helps us know what is good. Fine. So benchmarks यहाँ भी develop होते हैं, right? Moral का sense generally is again taken as something which emerges out of the custom or tradition and tends to establish something called a benchmark of good or desirable behavior. So religion and the provisions of religion which want you to do something in a particular manner, that may be called as religious morality. Understand? Then anything which is more related to your culture, to your habits, to your attitude means your community attitude, right? Your social attitude. Something which is related to that can be called as social morality. The benchmarks that society has established, they may be bigger than religion, you understand? They may be at higher level than religion. Then it can be region specific also. The same religion, same society, but in a different territory, right? And in a different area, amongst different people, right? Though belonging to the same religion or same society. What will be called community ethics? Because it is pointing to a specific territory or a region where people or a specific population resides. Now see, again a broad parameter can establish. In a community, in a region where a community lives, there may be people from diverse religions, right? But they may be following some standard customs and practices irrespective of the religion. कैसे? You go to, let's say, Andhra or Tamil Nadu or any other place, right? अब वहाँ Muslims भी हैं, Hindus भी हैं, Marwadis भी हैं, बहुत सारे North Indians भी हैं, but they have a standard practice of having a particular food, irrespective of the religion or culture or background they belong to, right? अब वो normally दाल की जगह सांभर खाएंगे, for example, right? तो ये food habit, aesthetics, mostly if you go there, aesthetics more or less seem to be similar. They may have some common patterns of architecture, common patterns of internal structure of the house, their dressing sense, right? Their expressions, वो commonality दिखेगी उसके अंदर. Irrespective of coming from different backgrounds, reading different religious texts, right? They may exhibit some common social behaviors. उसको भी हम क्या बोल सकते हैं? Community ethics. Specific to a territory. Specific to culture word क्या है? It is much bigger than religion. You understand? So there can be a regional culture, irrespective of the religion, irrespective of the source, irrespective of the ethnicity of the people. See? So what? See, ethics gives us better clarity in terms of understanding. Morality may help us understand the specific orientation of people belonging to a particular category or particular context, right? But ethics gives a larger picture. So you understand, see, the idea कि morality जो है वो एकदम distinct है, कोई distinct नहीं है. Morality is more specific in its orientation, and ethics is more general in its. Morality is less of rational, less empirical. Ethics is more empirical, more rational. So we can also say that the primary basis of ethical evaluation or ethical study and knowledge is empirical analysis, whereas for morality it is not. It may or may not be. Understanding? So when we talk about human rights, वो क्या आ जाएगा? वो ethics के framework में आ जाएगा. When we talk about community rights, वो क्या आ जाएगा? Morality के framework में आ जाएगा. Understand? When we talk about gender equality, वो ethics के framework में आ गया. But when we talk about the behavior or equality of women in a specific religion, right? वो किसमें आ गया? Morality के framework में. Understand? When we are evaluating family or the values of a family, वो morality के framework में आ गया. क्योंकि वहां पे evaluation contextual ही हो सकता है. You cannot evaluate it from always the global parameter. By standard practices, this families live this way. Yes, they live this way, right? But this family doesn't live that way. It doesn't matter. So there is something, an element of personal choice. There's an element of autonomy, and ethics understands it. And that is why ethical studies accommodate those moralities. You say it's okay. People can think about themselves as per their own value system. Nothing wrong in that. So see, a better understanding of any situation, any action, any consequence can be done by what you can say, a very balanced mix of ethical and moral evaluation. So without using a combination of ethics and morality, or ethical framework and moral framework, or ethical framework and sub framework in that is moral framework, right? We cannot specifically understand what is happening or what is the explanation of something. So when we say a husband should behave in a particular way, ethics, or husbands must behave in a particular way, let's say. But when we say the Hindu husband should behave in a particular way, of a moral standard. Politicians must behave in a particular way, of a ethical evaluation. Right? Politicians in the developing countries need to behave in a particular way. Abhi kya ho gaya? Contextual, moral. So see, we use the word political morality, political ethics, right? We generally don't distinguish much between them, right? But there is a very subtle distinction between them. तो पॉलिटिकल मोरालिटी हो सकती है कि भाई कांग्रेस की अलग हो, बीजेपी की अलग हो, राइट? आम आदमी पार्टी की है कि नहीं है, ये भी क्वेश्चनेबल है, राइट? बट उसमें भी हो सकती है. So logically, khanaun politics, right? Which they are using the word. Bharat is waiting for Ram. Lakshman kahan par lekin? That's a big issue, right? So see, but Ram is in Banwas, but Sita is at home. Sita has not been captured by Ravan. What is happening? This? What kind of Ramayana is this? So Ram has gone alone to Banwas now. जो भी हो, रावण इज कॉन्टेक्चुअल, राइट? सो ईडी रावण है, चलो फाइन. तो ये मान सकते हैं फिर भी भाई व्हाट काइंड ऑफ दे आर मैनिपुलेटिंग द एंटायर रामायण. सो इफ राम इज गोइंग फॉर दिस बनवास, द सीता शुड बी विद हिम. लक्ष्मण कहां गया? लक्ष्मण हैज कम आउट ऑफ द जेल. दिस इज रॉन्ग. ही हैज लेफ्ट द राम अलोन. फाइन. सो ये लॉजिकल है. You are taking the analogy which has no sense, right? But this is, see, what the level of politician, and she studied from some Columbia University, Oxford, right? Marx and Lenin का combination है, fine. और Oxford capitalist system है पूरा. Right? So how come she fitted into that idea? Coming from a Marxist-Leninist perspective and studying in the most capitalist system of this world, right? She should have gone to Germany, right, or some other place, at least Russia. So see, now it is obvious that जो morality है, that somewhere fixes the desirable standards in a specific context. Ethics, on the other hand, fixes a higher standard in a general context. So don't see there is any conflict, right? But yes, it is possible. Why? Because obviously moral standards may have their own personalized factors of evaluation. So ethics and morality may come in conflict many times, or in general they may come in conflict. Those areas where there is a conflict and there is no clarity, should it be called ethical or should it be called moral, or can it be both, or it is none, right? Those areas are called gray areas. So where there is a conflict between law, ethics, morality, law, morality, law, ethics, right? Where there will be conflict and dilemma, those areas are called gray areas because the ethics does not have any clear-cut description of that, right? Now see. So come to what is legal. Ab legal kya? Fine, it is possible. It is possible, right? That we have legal, and this entire is also right. ये possible कि जो भी legal है वो ethical है, fine. लेकिन जो भी legal और ethical है वो moral नहीं है. It is possible. कैसे? बताओ.
Sir, whatever state says legal, but moral, uncontextual and not.
ठीक है, sedition हो गया, ठीक है. Preventive detention moral है? Legal है ना? ठीक है. Legal है? Ethical है? है. Sorry. Preventive detention. चलो, let's say. The violence which is done by the state, either within the country or outside the country. Now, state justifies its violence on what ground? Security of the nation, sovereignty of the legal तो है, right? Constitutional premises भी है उसके लिए, right? Legal है और ethical भी है. Ethical क्यों है? Because it is based on the protection of such large population. Every nation state has the right to defend itself. Euthanasia, right? Okay, yes, that can be example. But let's simplify it. Let's say, अब ये moral था. Moral था भाई, क्यों नहीं था moral? कैसा moral था? See? यहाँ पे see there's a distinction. Moral था, yes. क्यों? When you take religion as the context, moral था. When you take religion as the context, moral है, right? When you take sedition, how it becomes moral? Stability of the country, right? तो ethical होना चाहिए. तो sedition क्या है? यहाँ आना चाहिए. If you say sedition law, what is it? It's legal, it's ethical. Why it is ethical? It has been used by the state only for specific circumstances. Arbitrary तो नहीं है ना? लेकिन you are, अब इसको बोलो कि ये legal ethical है लेकिन moral नहीं है. किस ground पे moral नहीं है? Human rights के context. You can use it, but ethical legal तो है. बहुत सारी. You can add lot of things. First, to understand the logic, things which are moral or immoral will be based on specific criteria. Understanding? Right? Though they may seem to be moral from the perspective or the framework we are understanding them. For example, when I take religion, let's say, for example, now let me take simple example. Caste. The classification of caste, yeah, the concept of, the pollution and purity. The notion of pollution and purity. You have heard about this or not? Yes. Notion of pollution and purity is a moral principle employed in the traditional Hindu caste system. Moral है? किस basis पे? तो ये important है. When you are defining something as moral here, right? You have to define it that it is moral based on this premise. Are you getting? ठीक है. Now, see, ये moral है. ये भी moral है. For example, fine, but caste system as such is considered exploitative. Are you getting? So मैं इसी morality को एक particular context से देखता हूँ human rights perspective से, right? इसी morality को. See, same thing. It's moral here. When I raise the parameter, when I take a different context and benchmark, what happens? यही moral, यही issue मुझे यहाँ देखने लगता है कि भाई ये moral तो है, लेकिन इसको ethical भी होना चाहिए, right? Now I'm using this context. Let's imagine this way that I'm using this criteria to evaluate this, right? तो इसमें से मुझे बहुत सारी चीजें, fine, वो moral तो लग रही हैं, लेकिन ethical नहीं लग रही. Why? My basis of evaluation has changed. Are you getting the point? एक ही चीज moral है, लेकिन वो ethical नहीं है. किस basis पे? जैसे ही मेरा बेसिस ऑफ इवैल्यूएशन चेंज हो जाता है. The moment I say sati is a pratha, it's a tradition. Yes, it has to be done because it is a tradition. तो मैं किस morality की बात कर रहा हूँ? Religious, cultural. जैसे ही बोलता हूँ sati is an ominous provision. It's an ominous tradition, right? What framework am I using? Human rights framework, gender framework, right? अब मैंने framework change कर दिया. Fine. जैसे ही मैंने framework change किया, तो then I understood कि भाई this thing is moral from one perspective, but it is not ethical. Right? For this thing to become ethical and moral, what should be done? This thing, right, can never become ethical unless it is eliminated. ये तो fact है ना कि भाई ये principle किसी भी ground पे ethical तो लग नहीं रहा है. Culturally, religiously, traditionally तो moral लग रहा है, but ये ethical नहीं लग रहा है. Neither ये legal है. Right? Understanding? तो जैसे मैंने criteria change किया, the same thing becomes moral but not ethical. Moral but not legal, right? So not ethical, not legal. You understand? Now see, let's bring this way.